I'd like to share with you another reading from this book, Meditation for Dummies. Imagine that you're getting ready to climb a mountain. How are you going to get to the top? You could take some climbing lessons, buy the right gear, and inch your way up one small climbing rocky face, or take a long path. Many trails meander up the mountain to the summit. People have been climbing the mountain of meditation for thousands of years in different parts of the world. Traditionally, the guidebooks describe a spiritual path involving a set of beliefs and practices, often secret, that have been passed down from one generation to the next. Although the maps in the books may describe the summit differently, some emphasize the vast open spaces, some pay more attention to the peace or exhilaration you get on the climb up there, and some even claim that there is more than one peak. I happen to agree with the ancient sage who said that meditation techniques are just different paths up the same mountain. Here are a few of the many techniques that have been developed over the centuries. Repetition of a meaningful word or phrase, known as a mantra. Mindful awareness of the present moment, mindfulness. Following or counting your breath. Paying attention to the flow of sensations in your body. Cultivating loving kindness, compassion, forgiveness, and other healing emotions. Concentration on a geometric shape or simple visual object. Visualization of a peaceful place or a healing energy. Reading and reflecting upon inspirational and sacred writings. Gazing at a picture of a holy being or saint. Contemplation of nature. Chanting praises to the divine. There are all kinds of meditative practices. They really are spiritual practices that take many, many, many forms. So I want to talk about meditation and the many different possibilities that are there, because often when we think of meditation, we think of a specific form. How many of you meditate? How many of you meditate daily? Everything we hear and read about meditation is that it's so good for us. Healthy, energizing, enervating, peaceful, relaxing. So, it's like, why isn't it on the top of my list of things to do? Well, the reason it's not on the top of my list of things to do is it's too hard. I'm very much enamored of the Buddhist tradition. I spoke last year about understanding the teachings of the Buddha in a deeper sort of a way, and mentioning that the often, I would say, mistranslated use of the word suffering, and that it means less about the suffering that we often picture, and it's more about just plain the disappointments and the dissatisfactions that we have in our lives that get in the way of our own just feeling good about ourselves and our lives. And the Buddha taught the eightfold pathway about having the right job, having the right attitude, having the right thoughts, and just structuring our lives in such a way that we can let go of that disaffection, that disappointment, and accept the joys and the delights of what we have as just plain being alive and being in the moment. But how do you do that? I always have to start, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I went to do a week training at a Buddhist retreat center in the Catskills, so I could learn how to do this, and become a much peaceful, gentle person. At 5 o'clock, we had somebody a monk walking through the barracks and ringing the chime, and we would have to get up and go and sit in sitting meditation. And we would sit for 20 minutes, and then we would stand up and do walking meditation for 20 minutes, and then sit for 20 minutes. That's sort of the standard approach for meditation. And we would do that at 5 o'clock, and then we would go to breakfast, and then we would do that washing your dishes, mindfulness. And then we would have some, there were about 30 of us there that week. And then we would have some chores to do around the place. It was an old estate that had been purchased and had become this Buddhist retreat center. We would have some different chores that we would have to do. And then we would sit and meditate again at 11 o'clock for an hour. And then we would go and have lunch. And then we had some more chores to do in the afternoon. And then we had some free time. And usually that entailed a nap for me. And then at 4 o'clock we would sit and meditate. And then we would have dinner and then clean up. And then we would have lessons. We would have the Buddha talk, the Dharma in the evening. And then we would meditate again at 9 o'clock, and then we would go to sleep. So we meditated 5 times throughout the day. And it was delightful for any of you who have done that. It was very peaceful. One thing I remember was one day, it varied in the afternoon, we were going to have a peace meditation. And so we all sat in this circle very quietly for 20 minutes and tried to do the wipe your mind, let go, let the thoughts go, you know the mantra. And then after 20 minutes we were to stand up, walk around once, and then sit down facing the other way and project our peace of mind, our gentleness, our kindness out into the world. And then after 20 minutes got up and walked around once more and then sat back down again. And it was an interesting experience because it stayed with me tremendously in that my initial thought was, well, it's not going to accomplish much. But I could actually sort of feel some kind of flow out of myself into the world without hanging on to it and without making it, but just allowing it to happen. And then when we came back and sat down facing into the center again, I felt exhausted. I really felt like I had emptied myself out. And sitting facing inward with these other 30 people, it really did rejuvenate me and reincorporate me and make me begin to be able to take that energy back in again and recreate it again. So I thought there's more to this, I think, than I sometimes might give it credit for. And this is something to be explored on a more personal, experiential level. It's certainly wonderful to do it. There's something to do it in a community, of course. But there's something to be gained in my own exploring of this. So I was resolved to do this practice fairly regularly when I got home. And that lasted for about 2 weeks. Because, I don't know about you, but my back hurt really badly after 20 minutes of sitting. And I was disappointed in myself. I was disappointed, I guess some way, projecting on the experience that it hadn't been able to accommodate me as an individual. But what they had taught me was the way to do it. And the way is not my way. And so what I had to do was to figure out what my way is. If this is a valuable thing to do, and if it does indeed offer me something, then how can I make it mine? Well, over the years, and I've shared this before too, I have a meditative practice. And it works for me. I sit on my front porch with my coffee and my dog. Well, I had a dog named Gus who would sit on my toes, and he would sit quietly, and he would sit as long as I sat. He died a couple years ago. The dogs we replaced him with won't sit still at all for anything. So that put a little crimp in it. And then, as you know, this cat adopted me 2 years ago. Well, she'll sit on my lap way past when I have to go to the restroom. And you can't ignore that. So I'll sit on my porch now with my cup of coffee and my cat. And I will, what I call, contemplate my day. And by that I don't mean go over my calendar and the things that I have to do. But as Thich Nhat Hanh says, I will focus that there are 24 hours ahead of me. There is a whole day here. And I can either live it, being aware and awake, or I can get to the end of it and go, oh, I missed that day. And so I resolve to try to be more attentive. That on the small things, the inconsequential things, and any kind of an interaction with any human being, listening to the birds, to stop and listen to it. If there's something wonderful playing on the music playing on my radio, one of the things that I have found is that I will often listen to CDs or music on my radio, especially when I'm in my car. And something will come on, it's one of my favorite pieces of music, and I go, yeah, I love this, I'm going to listen to this. And halfway through it, I realize I haven't been listening to it. I feel like I want to start it over again. So I start it over again, and halfway through it, I realize I still haven't been listening to it. That's the way I think we often live our lives. I'm going to pay attention to this. And then partway through it, I realize, I missed half of this. So how do I prepare myself mentally to do it? And certainly whatever techniques we have, Zen meditation, yoga, Tai Chi, I know people that get up and run 5 miles every morning. I think that's a spiritual practice. It can focus your brain, it can focus you, prepare you for the day. There's any kind of things that you can do that can do the whatever that is that's climbing the mountain and arriving at some more intentional state of awareness. So one of the challenges is for us each individually to discover what that is for us. I personally really like the idea of every morning just sort of saying thank you that I woke up this morning and acknowledging that I've got 24 hours and I'm going to try my darndest to pay attention to them. I'm going to try to not get to the end of the day and realize I coulda or shoulda or woulda done this. And instead be able to say, I lived that day as fully as I possibly could. So that's my take on this notion of meditation for dummies. These authors in here, they go on and they explain many different meditative practices, but they don't include that one as one of their suggested ones. They stick with the more traditionally acknowledged ones, such as contemplation and mantra and prayer and those kinds of things. But we, I think, Unitarians and Universalists who might want to pick and choose out of what we want to take and what might apply to us, have both the freedom and the opportunity to construct our own. So I would like to challenge you to explore the notion of meditation, whatever that may mean for you. And it may mean something else. It may be a different summit. It may be a different mountaintop that you're going to. I don't know what yours might be. But the whole notion of it just plain being about being awake. Sorry about that. I think that's the first step. Because you can't achieve peacefulness, gentleness, kindness, compassion if you're unaware. But if we can be aware, then we can construct those kinds of values and those kinds of gifts that we can both receive and share. But unless we can be totally and completely aware, and I know I've told this anecdote before, but it's one I live by, or try to. It's my favorite apocryphal story, the one about the Mahatma, Gandhi was running with his disciples for a train, to catch a train running down the platform as the train was leaving the station, and they just caught the end of the last car, jumped up onto the platform, and as Gandhi leaped up onto the platform, one of his sandals fell off. And he immediately reached down and took off the other one and tossed it out on the tracks behind him. And one of his disciples said, "Oh, but Master, now you won't have any shoes." And he says, "True, but the person that finds the one will now have a pair." Now I want to be the Mahatma. The problem is that I'm not that kind and gentle and aware. Because I can imagine myself running along, leaping onto the train, losing a shoe and going, "Oh shit." Pulling the emergency stop. And they're not even expensive shoes. But instead to be so aware of who, not necessarily who I am, but who I want to be. And the way I want to be in the world, that I can respond automatically to any kind of a circumstance like that. And I can be that kind of a person. Which is what every morning I think to myself, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. When I lose one of my sandals, I want to take the other one off and throw it. The problem is, I don't wear sandals, and that's not what happens. So what I need to do is to know that there's going to be something else that comes. And I don't know what that something else is. But when it comes, I want to be so ready for it that I can respond in the way I want to be and respond to it. And that's a spiritual practice, I think. And it doesn't mean emptying my mind and my spirit of all thoughts. It doesn't mean letting go and sitting in silence. It means focusing on the way that life can be and deciding and committing that that's the way life is going to be. And I do think that it has had an impact. I've shared plenty of stories with you over the years, and I think that a lot of times the moments when I do say yes are those moments when I have successfully been at that point. And it's delightful. It's so enriching, so comforting, so compelling. And I can look back at those times and say, yeah, I was alive and aware and awake at that point in time. So I want to take some time now to listen and to comments that you might have, observations, stories that you might like to share, any thoughts that you have on this notion of, I'm going to call it non-traditional meditation, meditation that might work for you, what it might look like, what you already do, what you find fills this place in your life. And as I've said, it can be gardening, painting, shoveling snow, making snowmen, snow angels.
Hi. I walk to work in the morning, and it's about a third of a mile, and I leave the apartment, and I close the door. Sometimes the baby's even crying upstairs, and I close the door and I leave, and that's nice, and I walk. And just recently, sometimes I started jogging in a half block if I want to, in my work clothes, whatever. And I try not to think about anything, and it's nice.
Commutes to and from are huge. I don't think we often give them enough value because it often entails time we don't appreciate away from our own life, and we want to do something else. But one of the things that I discovered was several years ago, there was a gentleman who had gone into business for himself as a consultant, and he worked out of his home. And he would get up in the morning and he would go through the standard procedures. He would, shower and shave and put on a jacket and tie, and he'd go out the front door, walk around the house and back into the house and into his office. and realized that he was now making a transition from one point in his life to another point, and that the focus, and he needed some prep time around that, and his level of consciousness and his focus of consciousness changed on that. And I know that's not exactly what you're saying, and the same thing goes with coming home again. Have you ever lived too close to home? You don't have a long enough commute to decompress between work and real life and loved ones. I mentioned a few weeks ago that I worked for the Postal Service for a while in the town I lived in. I would get home and everybody would stay away from me for about a half an hour. Because it only took 5 minutes to get home and I needed 35 or more. But that, you know, I commend you for that. Just walking and sort of paying attention. And one of the things that you can do, might happen, is that tomorrow, if you go to work, maybe it becomes a bigger thing even, because you've just said what you said.
I also use my commute the same way, but my best friend has 2 kids and they're really little, and she went to jury duty and had to stay there the whole day one day and the whole day the next day, and she spent the whole entire day just sitting there thinking. She was like, this was the best experience I've ever had. She didn't get selected, but she had to wait, and it's in Maryland. I don't know what the county was, but it's a little different. And she was like, I spent the whole day just thinking. I was like, you were meditating. She's like, no, I wasn't. But it's those little moments where you're alone, where you have that quiet time, you know.
Yesterday was about the 3rd or 4th day so far that I've been able to get out into the garden. And I can just lose myself out there pulling those darn weeds and, and trying to get all the last spring's spring cleaning done. So I guess that's kind of a meditation for me. But if you watch the Super Bowl, you may have seen the Jeff Bridges commercial where he's sitting there going, Om. And he's got a website. He was on The Tonight Show or Jimmy Kimmel promoting it, and it's about meditation and music to kind of help you get into it. And I think there's music involved also. It sounds really interesting, so I'm looking forward to getting to see what his website's about. I think it's called Dream with Jeff? Dream with Jeff? Something like that?
One of the things that when I went to this retreat center, they told us we could not bring any books and we could not bring any music. Almost canceled. But I think we often do fill our lives with entertainment, distraction. I know I do, and that's okay. I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying that, but the few moments that we might actually spend more focused than that sometimes escape us. Just to let you know how aware and awake I am. You may have noticed on the dashboard of my car I have a little wooden Buddha. I was supposed to bring him in this morning and set him up here, but he's still out there in the cold. And he sits there on my dashboard so that when I'm in traffic, the Buddha reminds me, calm down, be generous, be kind, while blood pressure's going up.
I do think that when you don't practice living in the moment, that's when most things happen to you. You lose things, you forget things, and you know, if you're thinking far ahead or something and you're not paying attention. And I'm hoping that this service has helped my husband. Because let me just tell you about him. I'm hoping so much if he's really focused to listen to this, because you know, he'll take out the trash and the recycling, and I have a recycling basket, and then the next day I'll be looking for my recycling basket. I'm like, honey, do you know where it is? He will have thrown it in the recycling along with the recycling basket. So then I have to go dig it out of the trash, and then he lost on Monday his checkbook and every single phone number that he needs in the world. We spent hours and hours looking for this, and I'm there, well, where do you think it'd be? I don't know, I just don't, it's my life is this, and on and on and on, and but there was nothing in the checking, nobody had it, and I'm like, so he left, so then I'm looking around trying to think of where he could possibly go, and I remembered that he did a kitty litter box downstairs, so I went down there thinking maybe he laid it there, so I retraced that steps, I went in the garage, I even opened the trash can, I didn't see anything, and he came home, I can't find it, and finally at the end of the day, he went out in the trash, opened it, and in the trash, under the litter, which I didn't even think to pick up it, was his checkbook. So my point is, this would be so helpful, honey. Listen.
It's Lee's turn. Your spiritual practice is Lee.
Work in progress. Long.
First of all, Lee, I'm happy to hear it's not just me. But this has been really helpful. I have been thinking recently that I do spend a lot of time with my eye on the clock, like waiting for time to pass. Let's just get through this, and let's just get through that, or, 2 more hours and my husband will be home from work. I'm home with a toddler. I have been thinking, like, I don't like always having my eye on the clock. It's like why I'm always trying to rush past the present moment. And even like this morning, my daughter's sick, and so she's been up the last few nights. She's usually a good sleeper, but she hasn't been the past few nights, and I'm exhausted. And I woke up, and almost the first thing I thought was, I can't wait to go to bed tonight. I just have to get through the day. I'm exhausted and sleep deprived. I just have to get through the day. And it's like, I don't want to just get through experiences and get through the day. So this has been a really helpful reminder that just a little more mindfulness can just allow me to sink a little bit more into the present moment.
Well, even being mindful of getting through the day is still being mindful. I mean, because life is full of junk. Lula is, 16 months, almost a year and a half.
Yeah, over a year and a half, but yeah, same difference.
And I can remember our kids, there were times when I wasn't necessarily happy about that, but I kept reminding myself that these were little individuals that were a part of my family, and how did I want to be in relationship with them, even when they pissed me off. Or were sick, and actually, I think when they were sick brought out even the best part of me often, but it's trying and tiring. But the compassion and the chicken soup kind of thing, but yeah, it's not, and thank you for that. It's not just the good things that we want to be conscious of or need to be conscious of. You all know at the end of, I'm not sure which of my email accounts, is the Henry David Thoreau quote, my favorite quote. I have a shirt that says it. Only that day dawns to which we are awake. And how many days in my life have I not experienced? And hopefully fewer and fewer and fewer. So thank you for that. I want to continue this conversation later, but
when Greg Minch said something about the role of music in his meditation experiences, that suddenly reminded me of the only time I never went into the Unitarian Church meeting at Cherry Hill. It just so happened that as I was driving there was announced that the Shostakovich's Fifth Symphony would be played next. So I sat in the parking lot. Shostakovich's Fifth Symphony right to the end. I never got inside. That was my great spiritual experience.
Absolutely. So next time you're not here, Phil. There's